issue is that if you take, for example, the Liberian Civil War, it was Nigerian and Ghanaian governments that led the intervention to save lives. We also had a Ugandan battalion that came in to save lives long before the UN ever thought of coming in, long before the United States sent its Marines off the coast of Monrovia. So we've got that experience. The major issue is that we are never prepared to prepare properly. For example, we should have had a standby battalion, partly based in Mali and partly based in Freetown, to carry out interventions that the French are carrying out right now. We have not been able to resource our military, resource our security services to do this kind of thing. It goes back to us. As I said at the beginning, if in 1963 Nkrumah realized and could project that if we didn't have a continental armed forces, we didn't have a continental central bank, we didn't have a currency, that problems will come and we will need foreigners to. 1963, people thought he was talking rubbish. Look at it today. We cannot even finance a standby battalion, a standby unit. We can't, because we are not prepared to sacrifice a little bit. We don't have the political leadership that is extremely pan-African in nature. I'll give you an example. Take the case of 1975. The South African Army was just some few kilometers from Luanda. It took General Murtala Mohammed of Nigeria to fly in Nigerian troops to save the situation with the help of the Cubans. So we've got the experience. We can do it again. The most important thing is that we need the political will to do it. And this is why all the beautiful resolutions and so on and so forth from the AU and ECOWAS, we need to translate them into action so that we can, if you say you are going to set up a standby battalion, you know that every country should contribute a certain amount every year into it, so that when there's a problem, we don't wait for France to come in. It is the French who created the Libyan crisis. The problems that we are facing in northern Mali, if Gaddafi was not overthrown violently, maybe the problem would not have been there. If they had to use a mechanism, even remove Gaddafi, but make sure that the weapons do not flow into Mali, into Chad, into Niger, into northern Nigeria. This is why we are now suffering. The same thing if you look beyond, for example, around Guinea-Bissau, where you have the Portuguese left millions and millions of arms. You see it, and they couldn't control the weapons when the new state took over. So you found it filtering through to the Casamance, to the rebellion in Casamance. So we have to think as West Africans, as Africans, that we have grown. We need to solve our problems in non-violent ways. Let me add that if you take the specific case of Boko Haram does not reflect the Islamic religion. Boko Haram doesn't represent the Islamic religion. Boko Haram is only being opportunistic in using verses out of the Quran to propagate what their paymasters are saying.
Who are their paymasters?
Oh,
who are those paymasters? Do we know them?
Yeah. Let me give you an example.
Like
Boko Haram gets 60% of its finances abroad. It gets some resources from groups in the UK, from groups in Saudi Arabia.
Do you know them?
No, I cannot name the groups.
How do you know they get?
Oh, it is on the web. If you go and
the web.
No. Let me give you an example. Research has been done that before Boko Haram was militarized, it was a very peaceful group relying on internal Nigeria charity. When it became militarized, when you militarize a situation, when you militarize a group, you look beyond to see who would support you. Those who support...
Who militarized this group and who are they looking beyond to?
No, they are looking beyond, for example, to Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb.
You are sure?
Yes.
The facts?
Yes.
I think, Abdul Moment, I don't know whether I could come in.
You can.
Please.
You see, just this past week, the UN put Boko Haram for the first time on the UN list of international terrorist organizations, and that was a novelty. For so long, Hillary Clinton had been told that Boko Haram posed an existential threat to the national security of Nigeria. She didn't listen. They put a 7 million bounty on their current leader, Abubakar Shekau. This is what happened in the chain of financing for a terrorist group. There are petrol-rich Arabs in the Gulf who believe so well that we should resuscitate the Muslim Caliphate. And they are using such groups in Nigeria. Look, for you to buy a helmet and a bulletproof vest, even at a subsidized price on the international arms market, you have to pay at least 1,000 US dollars. And today, even the Nigerian federal government cannot even pay the stipends of those who have been deployed, the 7th Division that has been deployed to Maiduguri and all that. So I shudder to think that internally, Boko Haram would be able to amass that amount of money to be able to buy those sophisticated weapons the senior colleague referred to. So therefore, I know so well that there are petrol-rich people in the Gulf, Saudi Arabia in particular, Qatar, Kuwait. Saudi Arabia is the most peaceful country in the Middle East, but it produces more jihadists. 15 of the 19 people who carried out the 9/11 attacks were from Saudi Arabia. In Iraq, Saudis carried out more suicide bombings than any other Arab nationality. So there are certain people who have been muffled by the current royal family, but they have an inherent desire to see the return of the Islamic Caliphate. So they are curious. And when the US said they had put, travel bans and had frozen the assets of Boko Haram, I laughed because these people do not wire money through the traditional banking systems.
All right. I've been the signal to go for a break. Doc, when we come back, I'll come to you and find out, because people have said that now when we talk about security, it goes beyond just the gun and bullet issues. We'd like to look at that when we return. And again, everybody, I'd like you to address the issue of Islamic State. What do people mean when they refer to the term Islamic State? We'll go for a short break. When we come back, the discussion continues. This is Talking Point.
My tummy.
He must have been eating roadside food.
No, Mom.
The problem could also be here. Germs get onto hands and into the body when eating.
Right, welcome back. This is Talking Points. We are live on GTV, live on GBC 24, and live on Unique 95.7 FM. And we're looking at the peace and security situation in West Africa. And we have Dr. Ali Duseidu, political science lecturer at the University of Ghana, here with us in the studio. Also here with us is Mr. Irbard Ibrahim, who is a news and security analyst, and Mr. Napoleon Abdullahi is a security and conflict management expert. And so, Doc, just before we went for a break, I wanted to find out from you the issue of security. People say it goes beyond just the gun, the bullet, and all those other traditional security matters.
Yeah, it's true. But before I address that, I just want to add a little bit to the question of having foreign military intervening in African conflicts and other stuff. The reason is that we now live in a globalized world where the activities of Africa as a continent affect the activities of Europe and all other countries in the world. So what happens is that we have a lot of trade relationship with America, Europe, and other continents across the world. We have a lot of security partnership, and a lot of Europeans and Americans have invested a lot of resources in Africa. God has blessed the continent Africa with a lot of natural resources, and a lot of these wealthy countries want to invest and exploit these particular natural resources. So it stands to reason that they have a lot of economic and other interests in Africa, and if they allow the situation to slip out of hand, it is definitely going to affect their economic interests. Going beyond even economic interests, I've learned that the US want to gradually shift their dependence on oil from the Middle East because of the volatile nature of the area. So they're now relying so much on African oil and other African resources. So it stands to reason that if they don't protect the stability of African countries, specifically countries that they have economic relationship with, it is going to endanger their long-term security and several other economic interests. Besides the fact that we have institutional and several other lapses, the economic, national, and other interests of these developed countries has to do with the fact that they always have to protect the stability of the African continent. Going beyond that, security, we have always look at security in terms of preventing conflicts, or when they break up we manage them. When we can't manage them, we resolve them. When we can't resolve them, we manage them. But if you look at currently the discourse of development, it has gradually shifted away from just looking at security from the point of managing conflicts to actually enhancing the welfare and the security of the human being. And even this concept of human security emanated from the human development concept by the UNDP. And the UNDP realized that development is not just about having a macroeconomic stability, having economic growth, controlling inflation and all those things. Development goes beyond that. It has to do with what? Creating an enabling environment for the individual to realize his or her fullest potential. How do you do that? By providing them with adequate and readily accessible healthcare system, by providing them with education, by protecting their human rights, by making them to live the life that every human being treasure and value to live. So from that particular element of looking at development, we have developed what we call the Human Development Index that measures countries' ability to live up to this particular predetermined set of goals. That goes a long way to enhance the welfare of the human being. So gradually shifting this particular concept from the development discourse to the security discourse, security now goes beyond just why do we even want to foster peace in the first place? Because we want to make life better for people who live within those particular countries. So security now has to do with what? Creating an enabling environment for people to live the fullest life that they wish to live. And if you look at now UN peacekeeping forces, it has moved beyond just going with the military, but it has to do with going with the military, civilian police, and even development experts, people who provide relief items, people who see to the need and welfare of the people who are affected by conflict. So moving forward, I think from the 21st century going forward, the concept of development and specifically security now focuses on enhancing the welfare and life of the individual rather than just talking about guns and peace and livelihood. But I think all these things is linked one way or the other to the human being, because we need peace because human beings can triumph. Development can be successful when there is peace than when there is war. So I think it is not a very profound concept that is going to take the discourse of development from the 21st century going forward.
Irbard, unless you have something else to add to what Doc has said, I'd like you to respond to the issue of Islamic State, because I find that to be at the heart of the Boko Haram scourge, and then also many of the other, security threats spread around Africa.
Yeah, I think the ambitions of all these transnational militants is to coalesce and form a synergy. Al-Shabaab takes its orders from the current leader of Al-Qaeda Central, Dr. Ayman al-Zawahiri. Al-Qaeda in Syria takes its orders from the same man. Boko Haram may soon issue a statement saying that there is a nexus between them and Al-Qaeda Central. So they believe that through the barrel of the gun, which is quite violent, they'll be able to bring back Islam on the footing of glory, just as we had during the golden era in the medieval times when Islam ruled most of the world. Andalusia, Spain was under Muslim rule, Southern Italy was under Muslim rule, and all that. That is why they want to give some potency to the concept of jihad in the religion, because we all understand that the Muslim army marched against the Christians that occupied the Byzantine Empire and all that. But today things have changed. Therefore, for what some of us who have understudied Islamic jurisprudence, we know that jihad is circumstantial. Jihad comes from the Arabic word jahada, and it means to exert an effort. So if you make an effort to put food on your family's table, you've carried out a form of jihad. So you can't reduce the connotation of jihad to being at daggers drawn with someone else. Therefore, if you really want to change the world, if you really want to bring back glory to the Islamic faith, you can do so through seeking knowledge. Because there are certain conditions you have to satisfy before you declare jihad. Apart from those ones I've mentioned, that you should have been fought on matters of religion. Number two, there should be a clear-cut Muslim leader who will declare jihad. And Allah makes it explicitly clear that it is suicidal for Muslims to stand up against any state if their force, the fighting force they have, does not make up at least half the military capability of their enemies. And the US today will literally sink the strength of the Muslim military in the world. So I think it is unwise to stand up against the current world order, even though as Muslims we are against certain things that are happening in the world. Homosexuality is completely frowned upon by the Muslim religion. We are averse to it. But how do we change the situation? Can we only do that through the barrel of the gun? There are other avenues to do that. That is why I think that we should adopt peace. We should adopt dialogue based upon mutual respect in finding
If
a common
someone
ground.
chooses to be a homosexual, what's your business in changing the person? That's the person's business. And I know that the religion says, for you, your religion, for me, my religion. Judgment is with God.
No, but when you look at the tapestry of what is happening across the world, a scheme is underway to shove this idea down the throats of nations around the world. When they tell you that your acceptance of homosexuals is tied to the umbilical cord of the financial aid they will give you, then that tells you that there is foul play at the foul intent at play here. And therefore, Islam is against homosexuality. But in a situation like that, how do you react to it? Do you go shooting people because they are homosexuals? Certainly not. Capitalism that has continued to, increase the gap between the rich and the poor. Certainly, Islam has a different fiscal arrangement for the world. But how do we make the Sharia relevant to the current world order? And that is where I think Boko Haram and other like-minded groups have got it wrong. They say they don't want to sit around the negotiation table with anybody because, first of all, the fact that you are Christian or Jewish means that it's non-negotiable. They have to fight you till you become a Muslim. And I think that is a wrong premise to begin with. The Holy Prophet, throughout his 23-year tenure, had, discourse with people of other faiths. We saw how he diplomatically dealt with the Quraysh when he was in Mecca. You've heard of Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, which was lopsided against the Muslim faith, but we accepted it. We saw how he treated the Jews. We saw how he treated the tribes and the tribes of Aus and Khazraj. And therefore, I think Islam should be made relevant, but we can do so by contributing to the national and the international debates, rather than thinking that we can have a warped understanding of jihad and go about killing innocent people.
Ms. Abdullah, as we begin to wrap up the show, I'd like you to, if you can identify for us what exactly it is that we as a continent are not doing right. Because when you compare what's happening in Africa to, say, Asia, which has more countries, the population is far, far more than what we have in Africa. They don't have the problems we have. You go to South America, Australia, it is, why only Africa?
There are several factors. One, we lack leadership. And when I mean leadership, I mean the type of leadership that we had in Nkrumah, in Ahmed Ben Bella. We don't have it today. If you take the South Korean dictators who industrialized South Korea, they were dictators, military dictators, yet they loved their country and they made sure that science and education was on the table. We don't have it. Or every time we coerce to foreign rulers, we are not nationalistic enough to know that we need to eat rice produced in Ghana. We are not nationalistic enough to know that even when you steal, you should use it to set up farms, to produce food.
Should you even steal?
No. In certain countries in Asia, when the leaders stole, they invested it back in their own countries. In our specific case, we take it outside. We lack, when we talk of multi-party democracy, we think that you have your manifesto, you win the elections, you forget of your manifesto until the next 4, 5, or 10 years when elections is around. Let me give you an example. Every government since independence has always talked of building a railway line from Accra to the north. It hasn't happened. Every government says that we want to process our cocoa. Yet the only government that took the concrete step was Nkrumah's government, where they built silos and they were thinking of how to process cocoa so that domestically we take it and then export the rest. No.
Perhaps Nkrumah's government had more resources than every other government, and that's why they were able to do what they did at the time. But we should really be wrapping up now so quickly.
So what we need to do first and foremost is, in the specific case of the conflict, we need to be led by intelligence. Intelligence-driven solutions would help us to mitigate some of the conflicts that we are seeing. For example, if you take any country in Africa, we need to be listening more to the professionals, and the politicians need to listen more to the professionals and take decisions that are nation-based or sub-regional based. Take the case of Nigeria again.
Yeah.
If you take the case of Nigeria, you would see that this is a country that can develop by just not ferrying the gas that is being fed up by oil companies.
All right.
It is not being done.
Mr. Abdullah, I know we ran out of time. I know you have so much to say, but let me wrap up with you before I come to Irbard, Dr. Seidu. Again, what can we do to either stop Boko Haram from spreading or, from similar groups from emerging? Very briefly.
Like I mentioned, the source of all these things has to do with the politics of resource distribution. And we need to always go back to the fundamental causes of these particular groups. Why do they do what they do? What circumstances or reasons motivate them to do what they do? When we try to ask those questions and move beyond the fact that they are extremists, they target people, they kill innocent people, we'll be able to get a solution to the cause of the problem.
Everybody?
We wish Nigeria well. I wish that those innocent, hapless 276 girls that have been abducted will be returned to their families safe and alive rather than in body bags. And the best way to prevent a possible contagion of the Boko Haram phenomenon into spilling over into other countries is by denying it that conducive environment it so desperately needs to thrive and solve the issues of marginalization. The north-south disparity is too wide. We have to solve that. There are about 360 Muslim-dominated shanties dotted across the country, largely living in penury, and the government should take a look at that as well. And then number 3, Muslims should embark upon an intensive and robust de-radicalization campaign. So young people like me who are in their 20s and 30s that may become vulnerable to the warped teachings of Boko Haram and others may not fall prey to them.
And unfortunately, we've run out of time, even though there's so much more we could have talked about. But the education is still on, and we've been speaking with Dr. Ali Seidu, political science lecturer at the University of Ghana. Doc, thank you very much for coming. Again, Irbard Ibrahim, news and security analyst. Mr. Irbard Ibrahim, thank you very much for accepting our invitation and for educating us on this issue. And finally, Mr. Napoleon Abdullahi, who is a security and conflict management expert. Mr. Abdullahi, thank you very much also for coming, and to you most especially for making time to watch and to listen to us. Next week, God willing, we'll be back here with another edition of Talking Points. Until then, I keep telling you, keep talking. We'll meet again, inshallah.